Well, hey guys, welcome back to the King of Glory in our MARANATHA Global Bible Studies. Last week I did a survey of Deuteronomy 17, and I want to hop in this week into next 3 weeks or next 2 weeks after this one into just maybe some shorter bite-sized chunks into the kingship from the heart of God as God sees it and as we see it in Deuteronomy chapter 17. Before I do that, I just want to take this. This is probably the last reminder I can give you about our Maranatha End Time Summit in Dallas, July 13th, 14th, and 15th. The time of this that this airs, I think it will be about a week or 10 days before the summit. So you still have time to register. We'd love to see you there. Feeling excitement and just a ton of anticipation, joy, probably a little bit of stress about there's not possibly going to be enough time to hang out with everyone that I want to hang out with, that we want to. But we're going to we'll sleep later. So if you can get to the summit, it's maranathasummit.com. We'd love to meet you there, to see you there, to worship with you, pray with you, fellowship with you, just to grow in the Lord together in Dallas. So join us if you possibly can. Like I said, I'm going to spend the next several weeks, including this one, just breaking down just simple single aspects of this Deuteronomy 17 passage. And then once that's done, I've got, I think, 28 weeks of just almost like a devotional focus on the supremacy of Jesus and his kingship that we'll aim at. So let me just dive back into the passage. As you would recall, that this is a time in the life of Israel where they've not yet entered the land, and God's anticipating a time when the people of Israel will demand a king like the nations they see around them. And he, knowing this, says, let me tell you how this should work, and lays out a framework for kingship that I believe, and I don't think I get much argument on this, ultimately points to Yeshua, to Jesus coming. And you see how he perfectly fits the qualifications that God lays out for an appointed king that God chooses. And so I'm just going to pick out one verse this week and start with that. And that's verse 15. Actually, I'll back up here into the end of verse 14. It says, let us set a king over us. When the people say, let us set a king over us, like all the nations around us, then verse 15. Be sure to appoint over you the king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your brothers. Do not place a foreigner over you, one who is not a brother Israelite. As I said, I believe this ultimately points to Jesus, and I that might sound like so overly simplistic to say that, but I'm amazed, even at this advanced age of being in ministry a long time, how many people still really don't fathom, don't own in their hearts the depth and the significance of Jesus returning as a Jewish king. I highly recommend Joel Richardson's book, When a Jew Rules the World. He does such a great job of, I think, building the fundamental building blocks of understanding Jesus as our Jewish king, what it means to us, how God fulfills covenants, and what it'll look like upon his return. And I know I've talked a lot about that. I know, like I say, it's kind of going back over and mowing the grass again, but I don't think you can do that enough when it comes to this topic. And God lays it out here, I think, in verse 15 of Deuteronomy 17 to appoint a king over you that's from among your brothers, that is a fellow Israelite. And I think that bears a bit of explanation or a bit of context or a bit of maybe understanding, so as not to lose our heart. And when I say our heart, I would say the goyim, the Gentile heart. I'm assuming that most of you who are watching are not Jewish or Messianic Jews, or I know some friends in the U.S. who would consider themselves former Jews that have, in their minds, the way they would say it, converted to Christianity and left their Judaism behind. No matter, you know, that category of Jewishness, I would suspect that most of you who are watching now are of not of any significant Jewish lineage, or at least enough that you can make Aliyah and be considered Jewish. The reason it's important to address this to you is because I think that there is a tendency I've noticed amongst believers. Certainly, this could give way to replacement theology, but it at least gives way to a way of relating to God that involves lessers and graders. And so, when God says, "Choose a king, appoint a king over you from among your brothers," like, don't go outside of the Jewish family. Don't go outside of the 12 tribes to appoint a king over you. I think it might be easy to lend yourself toward a tendency that says that God just loves these Jewish people more than he loves the other people groups of the world. And that's just not the case. When God makes this qualification, it is not because he's saying qualitatively, I love my chosen people, the Jewish people, more than I love the Gentile peoples of the world. In fact, that nothing could be further from the truth. God is incapable of qualitatively loving a people group, any particular people group, more than another. What God does is he chooses, when he looks at the people groups of the world, he chooses from amongst them the weakest and the most humble in order to make an example of them. Basically he's saying, I could choose from amongst any of the people groups of the world, and with my glory implanted within them, I will make them priests to all the nations of the world. I will set them apart. They're the apple of my eye. I have a special responsibility for them that puts great weight on them to bear out this covenantal responsibility, but it does not mean that God loves them more. What it simply means is that God is purposeful and strategic, and he's aimed even back here in the Exodus. You could go all the way back to Genesis, to the Proto-Evangelion, to the garden, and you see that God's purposeful and strategic, and he has an end in mind from the beginning. And his aim here is in fulfilling the covenantal promises that he makes. And you see that I'll probably get at this next week, but I think that there is a literal way in which this is fulfilled in David when David is chosen from amongst his brothers, not just from amongst the Jewish people, but literally from amongst his brothers. I think that there is a beautiful way in which that ties us back here to Deuteronomy 17.
We hope you're enjoying this Maranatha Global Bible Study. Wanted to take a quick minute here and ask you to consider something. Our highest priority as an organization is laying foundations where there are none in the 1040 window, in accordance with Romans 15, to name the name where it's never been named. Now, if this is something that resonates with you, if you love the Maranatha message, proclaiming it to the ends of the earth at the end of the age, if this is something that resonates with you, I want to ask you to consider becoming a $5 monthly supporter of FAI. This is, as crazy as it sounds, one of the most relevant and significant ways that you can support the work of the Great Commission through the FAI Global family is by giving $5 a month. Because as the collective body of $5 givers a month grows, so too does our ability to increase our workforce on the ground and expand our initiatives and activities and operations in the Middle East in the 1040 window. So click on the link below for more information and consider starting today becoming a $5 monthly supporter of FAI. Thank you guys. Back to the teaching.
But I wanted to spend a few minutes today, and it really will be relatively short, to just maybe highlight how this Deuteronomy 17 qualification of being chosen from amongst the king, being chosen from amongst the brothers, and being of amongst the fellow Israelites, that we see this coming through David's line, and how really God's purposes, this is about God's purposes more than it's about his love. Of course, his covenant is full of love, but I'm just wanting to make clear to you that I don't think that this means that he's saying, I'm going to only allow the king of the Jews to be from the Jewish people because I love them more. No, it's because he has an eschatological, he has an end in mind. He ultimately has the restoration of the kingdom into its Edenic state to perfection. And for him to accomplish this, he will fulfill all of the covenantal promises that he makes. And one of the key covenantal promises that's made is made through David, through the throne of David. And you see this, there's just so many scriptures that point to this. I don't have time to go to highlight all of them, but it's a theme that's repeated over and over again is really that Jesus as the Messiah will sit on the throne of David, which is located in Jerusalem on Mount Zion. And we do believe that there's a day where he'll literally return and sit on that throne, and his rule and reign will radiate out to the ends of the earth. And I think you would agree that the throne of David is refers in scriptures to a literal place as well as kind of as to the authority of the royal dynasty that existed through through Israel in its early days and will be restored at the end of all days. This is, as 2 Samuel says in 2 Samuel 5:7-9, the word Zion refers to the hill on the southeastern edge of Jerusalem where the city of David was located. And I want to just kind of highlight a couple of scriptures, and then again, we'll just keep this very focused on just this one verse and how I think Jesus, like if I'm going through and checking boxes here on the resume, I'd go, well, this is certainly a man in the fullness of time who was sent by God in the qualification line of this Deuteronomy 17 passage. And so here we have in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 11 to 16, this promise of one being born in time that would fulfill and be the one who would be the eternal dweller on the throne of David and fulfill the promise of an eternal kingship. So here's the scripture. The Lord also declares to you that the Lord will make a house for you. When your days are complete and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your descendant after you who will come forth from you, and I will establish his kingdom. Again, I don't think that you can make the argument that Solomon ultimately fulfills this. He doesn't fulfill the qualification to Deuteronomy 17 nor of 2 Samuel 7. I will raise up your descendant after you who will come forth from you, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Your house and your kingdom shall endure before me forever. Your throne shall be established forever. And again, you see this promise of restored Davidic, or as part of the Davidic covenant, a restored Jewish kingdom over and over again in the scriptures. You see it in Psalm 110, where it says that the Messiah ultimately will sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Another, significant Messianic promise that points to this one who is from amongst the Jewish people and in the line of David is in Isaiah chapter 9. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, and Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. That's, not a temporary kingdom, or it's not a promise of a temporary kingdom. Later, Isaiah says that throne will be established in loving kindness, and a judge will sit on it in faithfulness in the tent of David in Isaiah 16. And then we get to Jeremiah, the prophecies of Jeremiah. And one of the reasons I love this one so much is because it actually reconciles the division that existed within the the within Israel into the two kingdoms. And this is what Jeremiah 33 says: "Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time I will cause a righteous branch of David to spring forth, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth. In those days Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety. And this is the name by which she will be called: the Lord is our righteousness." And so there's this reference to both the house of Israel and the house of David that shows us ultimately that one will come. Jesus will come and not merely rule over the house of Israel, but also the house of Judah, bringing together a fully and restored and unified whole house of Israel. And this is good news. Ultimately, it's prophesied over Jesus at his birth, or before his birth, to Mary, that he would be the one who would come and sit on the throne of David. And I love that as we look to the end of his life, when he enters in, and I've spoken on this already in this series several times, but I could never really get beyond it, that when he enters into Jerusalem in that fulfilling that Zechariah prophecy on a colt, that they say to him, Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai, that they are acknowledging him, whether they know or not all that they're saying that he would be the one, that he is the King of Glory that would ride in and sit on David's throne. He then is crucified, resurrected, and then of course, as he spends 40 days with his disciples, he teaches almost exclusively on the restoration of the kingdom to Israel. And then, of course, some say that he rebukes the disciples when they ask if this is the time the kingdom will be restored, and he says it's not for you to know the time. He doesn't rebuke them. He just says, he encourages them. And you hear Peter just after Pentecost opening his mouth and preaching the gospel really for the first time to the Jewish people, and he specifically references back to the period of restoration of all things about which God spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets from ancient time in Acts chapter 3, verse 21. That's the very first thing that's coming out of his mouth, is a longing and a looking forward to the time where Jesus will return in glory to sit on this throne. And so, look, simply said, again, if there's a bullet point checklist that we need to see God's chosen king for Israel, the first point is that he would be chosen from amongst the brothers, a fellow Jew. Jesus is this man who is, was and is to come. It is our coming Jewish king who will rule and reign from David's throne on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Praise be to God. Next week, we'll take a look at the second aspect of his job qualifications. Until then, Maranatha.